On a suddenly not so casual 7-point sharp Sunday, it is Circa Millions the show. It is week 14 NFL Sunday, December 11, 2022. It is Sharpie Waters Nation, 9 Words Lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. It is the shark. It is the gun. It is the odds fellow. Guns picks. What's going on this morning, my brother?
Week 14, folks. Week 14. And I don't know where all the season is going. It is going way too fast, but I'm ready for this card, baby. We've been absolutely cooking. The plays have been cooking, and I'm going to pass it over to Odds Fellow. How you doing this beautiful Sunday morning?
Switched over to the winter gear, the winter hat, not a buy hat. We'll talk about that later. That's a lot of points, but it is a wonderful Sunday. Somehow we got way too many buys this late in the season, but it's an interesting slate and one that I'm excited to watch, excited to see. Let's get into it.
Yeah, 6 buys. Not a lot of games, but pertinent, intelligent games. Guns picks. Air Force hat. Forget college football. We are going straight to Orchard Park, New York. You're taking a total. In the snow, Buffalo, New York Jets. Letting the song fade out, sending it to the gun for the first official play of the Week 14 broadcast. What's going on here?
Look, this is more of just line correlation to me because when you look at this line right now, I think it's sitting at -10 right now for the Bills. I understand where the line is coming from. It's more predicated on the fact that it is a revenge game and what they saw last week with the Bills. Not playing their best offensively, but did enough to make the stops with the Patriots. So, but I'm looking more towards the total here. So the total is sitting here. I got it at 43.5. When you actually look at these teams, both teams average 37 points per game on the totals versus divisional opponents. So you're looking at a rock fight type of situation here. Both defenses are actually playing really well right now. Also, you look at the Jets, their average totals in their games, 35 points per game in the last 4 games. And they played some real quality teams here. We're talking Minnesota, high-scoring team, Chicago, another high-scoring team. New England Patriots, not so much. And then you got the Buffalo Bills that they played at home 4 weeks ago. Now when you look at Buffalo on the other side versus above-average defenses, so they face the ranked 13th defense in the Baltimore Ravens. They put up 43 points. 4th ranked defense in the Jets, 37 points. 7th ranked defense, New England, 37 points. All unders. And also, you got to look at the Bills. You would think that they're an over team. Not so much. They're 9-3 to the under this season alone. So I'm going to go follow the trend of, a divisional opponent that they want to really beat down here. And I just think it's going to be a rock fight. So, in Buffalo, breaking tables, pouring mustard on each other, drinking a ton of beers. It's going to be live there. Give me the under 43.5. That's a 2-unit special.
Yeah, speaking of drinking a beer, cheers up, fears down in the chat. We see Bet with Mikey in the chat, sending you good vibes, brother. We know sometimes you're not the happiest soul, and we're going to send you good vibes through the screen here. And, of course, on a Sunday, not so casual, 7-point sharp Sunday. Top play for me as I drink this beer. New York Jets +10. And what's going on here? Line functionality within the division. And when you see the New York Jets cover and win outright at home at +10, +11.5, and Buffalo comes home in the revenge game, the expected upward point within the line, and it sticks down at 9.5, they're telling you a New York Jets story. And we've been talking about this all year. The New York Jets started the campaign 4-0 on the road, ATS. They are 0-1 in the division, ATS. Guns and I were talking about this on Thursday night. 10-3 loss, non-cover at New England. Punt return touchdown to close the game. Not exactly symptomatic of an authoritative cover by the New England Patriots, and coming off a non-cover last week against Minnesota. Last time they had back-to-back road games, they did play a very competitive road game within the NFC North at Green Bay the first week in Week 6, Sunday, October 16th. And then they came back on the road in a very difficult environment. Anthony Latino knows this very well. DVOA won Denver Broncos, 16-9 win. Going to be a snowstorm, a rock fight that certainly features the dog. We're on it for 1 unit official. New York Jets plus 10. Anthony, any comments here?
No, I think just with Buffalo, don't underestimate how banged up Josh Allen might be. It's not to say they're a great team, that they still might be the Super Bowl favorite if they get it done in the AFC. But right now they're just scrapping to the end of the regular season, and you got an upstart Jets team here that's still hungry. So it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a fun one up in Buffalo.
Absolutely. Second play, 1 o'clock, Fox Sports, Detroit, Michigan, Ford Field. The gun is percolating, is energizing, is jumping off. If he had an actual gun, things are coming out of the system. Detroit Lions at home in a revenge game, a team that is taking on the persona of head coach Dan Campbell. I think a lot of people in Hard Knocks thought, okay, this is great. This is talking points. This is energy. This is fraternity. This is on-field NFL football. This team is a juggernaut at home ATS, and this team is ready to kick some ass. Guns picks, unofficial.
Yeah, this is my top play this week. I almost made it a 3-unit play, but I'm, keeping it responsible for you guys here in the chat. Let's talk about Detroit here. Detroit coming off a home win. They beat the crap out of the Jacksonville Jaguars, properly, 40-14, plus 171 net yards. And then you have Minnesota coming off back-to-back wins versus AFC opponents. And winning a close one last week versus the New York Jets, 27-22. But look at the net yards in this game, minus 199 net yards for the game. The Jets absolutely dominated them in the yardage battle. Just couldn't put the biscuit in the basket to get us the cover last week. Very disappointing. My apologies to anybody that tailed me with the Jets. Now you got to look at Minnesota. Minnesota is the most fraudulent 10-2 team on the planet. I can't understand why this team is 10-2. They have a plus 1 point differential, minus 63 net yard average overall this season. And then you got to look at Detroit on the other side. Losing record, losing team, minus 1 point differential, minus 33 net yard average. It looks like Detroit is the better team if you're just looking at straight numbers and you're not looking at the scoreboard. Also, Minnesota on the road this season, 0 point differential, minus 81 net yard average. Minnesota in their last 4 games, minus 6 point differential, minus 133 net yard average. You're seeing a pattern here, folks. This is a falling knife. We don't want to catch a falling knife here. If you actually look at DVOA, I know that's Oddsfellow's wheelhouse. I actually went and just took a look. I go, where's this team sitting at? They're sitting at 20th in DVOA right now overall this season. It's crazy. This team should not be 10-2, and there's a reason why Detroit is favored here. Another good point, revenge spot. Detroit lost to them 28-24 as 6.5 point road dogs, despite a plus 29 net yard average for the game. Plus 6.5 in Minnesota. They don't have to travel that far to get to Detroit, and they're sitting minus 2.5, minus 2. That is a huge line swing in just a couple of 4 to 8 weeks or something like that. Please, come on. Minnesota cannot play Detroit either. 0-4 against the spread versus Detroit in the last 4. So all that being said, all boxes checked. This is my top play this week. I got it at minus 2.5. I think it's sitting at minus 2 right now. So take the line value. Give me Detroit all day long. 2.5. 2-unit special.
2.5, 2-unit special, and full alignment from the Shark. I got my guy Jerbaka 42 in here saying he's tailing Lions. Believe it, buy it, dominate it with us. And we've been talking about this all year, but I think in recent history, you have to really zoom in on the Lions schedule and say, this is not yesteryear's Lions. Go back to week 8. This is when this whole thing really began. A tight non-cover against a very impressive Miami team. And now, since then, 4-1 straight up. Outright win at home against perpetual divisional rival Green Bay. At Chicago, the first time they had beaten Chicago in a long time as well. A highly impressive road win. Road back-to-back outside the division at the Giants. Hammerlock, 31-18. A very tight cover against Buffalo, 28-25. And a blowout last week against Jacksonville. And what is this telling you? Inside of the division, outside of the division, road, home, back-to-backs, all of it. Buy the Lions, buy the revenge, buy the number, and fade a 10-2 Minnesota team, which is the biggest public darling of the week. And I will say this, what is a public darling? Very, very basic stuff. A 10-2 team with no research getting points. People who are very recreational fall in love with flat win-loss record as the alarm goes off because Joe Public just woke up to pound the Vikings, and they fall in love with this stuff. You want to fade it. You want to buy the Lions. Throw it to Anthony, his first comment of the broadcast. What's going on here, bro?
I do lean over. I see some people in the chat on that. I think that's a very good look, probably sitting around 51 or 51.5. I don't know if I'm going to play it yet or wait for that thing in game, but these teams actually are pretty evenly matched defensively per the DVOA metrics. You got 18th for Minnesota, Detroit 19th. That's the problem with this line too, and where we're at, and we're all over the place. You've probably heard the narrative about how statistically bad the Vikings are as a 10-2 team and a team of that quality. Ton of one-score wins, which you'd expect to see some regression. They're winning the turnover battle and the turnover differential. Again, something you normally see regression in. So it's just a tough spot to back them with all those boxes checked. To me, that would have led to me thinking, oh, you keep hearing about Detroit. You keep hearing this narrative. Maybe more people are on Detroit. That's still not the case when you look at some of these splits. Although the money favors Detroit, most of the percentage is still of the bets are still with Minnesota. So interesting spot there. I think matchup wise, these guys are going to sling it around and getting it some points. I've been burned by the Lions before, not converting in the red zone and doing some dumb things. So that's why I might wait in game, but I do lean over 51.5. So I just wanted to shout out like Sammy and some other guys in the chat that mentioned that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire chat we got going on this morning. Akbar, my guy, what's going on? Detroit Gator, my guy, talking about overnight. We're hanging out, 5 a.m. chats, lifestyle only. The Fallish Hound, stay high, HIGH, happiness in the backside of it. And it's a lifestyle as it is. Next play, we're throwing it back to Anthony Latino here. Divisional battle, Tennessee Titans at home. Speaking of public darlings, I think the public is still trying to buy back somehow on a filthy heater. They just don't understand statistics. And when you start to understand statistics, you realize a team like the Titans that goes 8-0 ATS is not supposed to bounce back to continue to go 16-1. They get a divisional rivalry game here. Jacksonville traveling on the road off a blowout loss last week, which we had correctly on this broadcast. Now we're looking at Jacksonville in the zigzag environment. Anthony Latino, an official.
Yeah, and I think the key for me here is I'm still above that hook, right? I'd play it at 3.5 for Jacksonville, evenly, pretty evenly matched from a DVOA perspective. 16th for Tennessee, 24th for Jacksonville. I think some of that's weighted against a couple interesting performances. It's a tough spot because it's late season division matchups. Usually I like to have this be the second of the two division matchups. It's not the case with this one and a couple NFC East battles like the Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. So these teams match up again in the last game of the season. And I just worry here there's some motivations, there's some interesting points, there's some of the regression that Shark mentioned. Tennessee's all but got this thing wrapped up from a division standpoint, and they know they have another game on deck with these guys. So yes, they do perform well in the division and they get these things done, but I just don't think it's a team that is built to pull away. They're still trying to get Tannehill back in there. They haven't been able to run the ball as well. The biggest factor here that you're looking into is just, can Jacksonville stay out of their own way? Can they get a little bit more disciplined, stop shooting themselves in the foot like they did in some of those games, I think against the Giants where we had them and backed them. But what really stood out to me here, and I just want to get the number right and double check it, but Jacksonville, Tennessee, point differential, very interesting, right? Tennessee minus 21, Jacksonville minus 14. Neither super impressive, but again, you look at Tennessee, you look at the record, you look at some of that regression. They're not blowing teams out. They're not sitting on a positive point differential with that record. So there's just some interesting factors here again, where I think if you can get it above a hook, what might end up being a close 1, 2, 3 point game, that's a win, baby. Plus 3.5, Jacksonville Jags.
Yeah, fully alignment for me. And, when I start to look at the Jacksonville Jaguars schedule here, Jacksonville has one divisional road game. And I think it's important to note, it was week 6. They did not cover 34-27, but that was still in the Frank Reich era. And people that watched that game and watched, obviously, NFL football on Sunday know what happened in that game. Jacksonville probably should have covered that spread. Matt Ryan had a deep ball touchdown to Alec Pierce, young stud receiver, to basically close the action of the game to get a cover for Indianapolis. Jacksonville was right there the entire game. outside of the division, they have not been great ATS. Week 1, non-cover Washington. Week 4 at Philly, came out super hot, actually up 14-0 in that game. Got backdoored 29-21 to not cover a +7, 6.5, somewhere around there. And of course, the last 2 road games, both outside of division, a hook non-cover at perennial championship quality Kansas City, and last week the blowout at Detroit. This is their second divisional road game. And again, I think the key point here is you're getting a situation to fade Tennessee. Tennessee is 1-0 ATS at home in the division against the aforementioned Indianapolis Colts in week 7, 19-10, fairly lackluster. I think this team is showing what we were talking about before. When you go 8-0 ATS, you're supposed to crater down. Did not cover their last home game against Cincinnati. Blowout road. Jacksonville, as Anthony mentioned, a key number at +3.5. We're on this officially. Another 1-unit play per the Shark. Guns picks, comments on this, or should we keep it moving?
Guns, before you go, just one thing to answer what you posted, and I'm glad you flashed it if you want to show it again. Jags got to stop Henry. I didn't mention this, and I should have. Jacksonville defensively, not that impressive, right? I like going back to DVOA, but you look at that split. They sit 29th per DVOA, 31st against the pass, 13th against the rush. That doesn't always hold up, right? But statistically speaking, this team is better against the run, and the Titans have struggled to get Henry going a little bit. So I think that plays well into what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, Guns, anything?
Yeah, I mean, this was the outside looking in, almost made the card, but didn't quite make it. A couple of the boxes didn't really check for me. More so of Jacksonville, of how they perform on the road. They have a -5 point differential, -73 net yard average. But you look at Tennessee. Tennessee's not boding any better. They're -2 point differential, -68 net yard average overall. This is like the Tennessee Titans and the Vikings are just the most overrated, inflated teams on the planet. The 2 back-to-back losses that Tennessee took in those beatings were Philadelphia and Cincinnati. So take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. Those teams are really playing top-notch football right now. And then you have Jacksonville coming off of just a bad loss, a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. They may want to come out here and smack them in the mouth versus divisional opponent. That's another key point here. But Tennessee's also coming off back-to-back losses. So it was one of those situations where, I would say if I had to lean, as long as you get it above the 3, I would say that's probably defiable to go and take the Jacksonville Jaguars. But there is no way am I going to be jumping on the Tennessee Titans, the most public team this week, I believe, if you actually go and check the ticket counts.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville won this game, if I'm being really honest. And, Jacksonville is 1-5 on the road. But again, key point, only one road divisional game. And it was very, very tight, where they did get backdoored in fairly egregious fashion by the Colts. And speaking of divisional games, Guns picks. Next play, Paycor Stadium, Cincinnati, Ohio, within the AFC North. We got the Browns at the Bengals. Cleveland coming in here. Deshaun Watson, career start to with the franchise off a backdoor cover last week. Definitely a little lackluster in the first half, trying to feel it out. Not entirely sure if that was the fact that he hadn't played in a long time, or if it was a little nerves getting against his old team in Houston, of course. But a divisional game and Guns picks on the road team officially at +5.5.
Usually, I usually like to take the team on revenge in terms of divisional games, but in this spot, I think the number got steamed up 2 points, and I just like the 5.5 at the plus, and it's just a 1-unit play for me. But I want to talk about this for a second, because Cincinnati's really coming in here red hot. They had a nice home win versus KC last week, 27-24, +82 net yard average for the game. They've won 4 straight, 6 out of the last 7. So they're coming in here a little too hot for their britches. Now they're going to go play a divisional opponent. When you look at them against divisional opponents, all right, Cincinnati is -4 point differential, -6 net yard average. They haven't bowled well versus their divisional games this year. So that is a key point here. But when you look at the Cleveland Browns on the other side versus divisional opponents, +9 point differential, +120 net yard average. So the dynamic between who can step up when they have to play these key divisional games, I lean towards the Cleveland Browns here. Also, you got to look at Cleveland. It's just absolutely dominated Cincinnati dating back to 2018. They've won 8 out of the last 9 matchups straight up, and the underdog is 6-0 against the spread in those matchups as well. So I know they got Deshaun Watson. He didn't play well last week. He was a little bit rusty, but that was expected. And then what happened was the team got together. They stepped up against a Houston Texans, but I take that with a grain of salt. And the defense actually stepped up and actually got them the points that they needed to actually not only win the game, but get the cover. But let's see if Deshaun Watson gets his feels this week versus a Cincinnati team that is, playing really, really good football right now, coming off a big win. I just see at some point they're going to have a flat spot, and I think the flat spots usually hit with divisional opponents. So I'm going to be riding Cleveland plus 5.5, and that's a 1 unit for me.
Yeah, jumping off that, I don't think you're wrong here. And I think the first key point here is line functionality within division. I think it's very important stuff. If you actually go back to that previous matchup where, of course, Cincinnati did get hammered on Monday Night Football with a lot of different moving parts and injuries and ambiguity points, but they were 3.5 on the road, and they opened at 3.5 at home. This should have come up to 3.5, 7. It is short. It got steamed up for a lot of different reasons. But Guns and I were talking about this on Thursday, and I think it's a very important point. I was making the point about the AFC wildcard race and how there's a ton of moving parts within 4 or 5 teams. Cleveland Browns are sitting in what you would call a promiscuous position. They are 5-7 on a dub 2, getting their starting quarterback back. And we talked about this, but Jacoby Brissett played reasonably well, and he left them feeling great vibes about him with a backdoor outright win against Tampa Bay at home going back 2 weeks. And, of course, you get Deshaun Watson now coming up with upward movement. And you get Cincinnati here off a significant winning streak. And what Gunn said is very, very real. We've been talking about this all year. Cincinnati starts slow. They started 0-2, and they've been hot ever since. They are 6-1 straight up last 7, coming off a gigantic home win against Kansas City, having to go on the road next Sunday at Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. I think a crucial point here, Cincinnati is 4-0 ATS at home outside of the division, but they are 0-1 at home inside of the division ATS, dating back to week 1 against the Steelers, an outright loss 23-20. I'm not on this. I think Guns is onto something very sharp. And Anthony looks like he wants to make a very sharp comment.
Yeah, I lean that way too. I mean, historically, they've owned Cincinnati for whatever reason, coaching matchups, Myles Garrett and the defensive line getting pressure against a suspect and sometimes Swiss cheese like Cincinnati Bengals offensive line, although they've tried to address that. The one counterpoint I think would just be the revenge factor. Can Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, a team that's swinging upward and obviously finished last season very strong, can they finally get it right and get it done? If I had to at that number of points again, taking the points, not a money line there, I do lean Cleveland as well. But Burrow, always tough to tangle with. So I think this is a fun game, one I'm really excited to. Deshaun Watson hasn't played football in 2 years, so I think you saw some of that last year. Let's see how he looks today.
I agree with you. I think this game has a ton of intrigue. And speaking of intrigue, and also speaking of this division, we get another divisional battle. Ravens at Steelers. Remove Lamar Jackson. Enter Tyler Huntley. You get an environment where Pittsburgh is fitting the same exact mold and model that I just described with the Cleveland Browns. In the playoff race, unexpectedly off a very lackluster start, now 5-7, coming off a sequence of wins. Pittsburgh did win both times last year against the Steelers, maybe not coincidentally, without Lamar Jackson later in the year as well. This line is telling you a Pittsburgh story, and the odds fellow has an official.
DVOA, we always talk about it, right? Baltimore 4th overall, Pittsburgh 18th. I'm getting points. It's easy. Let's take the Ravens. No, you mentioned that game. January 9th, the season finale. I think it propelled, with some other noise happening, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin back into the playoffs with Ben Roethlisberger, who was on his last legs, his last arms, his last everything, right? That game closed, again, with Tyler Huntley starting at the time Lamar was out. I forget what the issue was. Baltimore closed -3, a total of 40.5. Those lines moved down from where they were opening, preseason. At some point, it was around 6 and 42. Here you flip all the way back. We do know this is a home game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. but that Steelers team won that game 16-13 in overtime. It closed regulation 13-13. They got the field goal to walk it off, in that game. And I think you're going to see a similar game script here. The Steelers, that team that did that in the season finale, was worse statistically, eye test wise, defense and offense compared to this team this year. They do have TJ Watt back. You've seen a better mold for them, since they came out of that bye, what that offense has been able to do. A rookie quarterback that is getting more comfortable. Do I trust him? No, but he's a comparable quarterback in this league that can win games as a starter, and he might be the future for them for at least the next few years. So, Huntley threw 2 picks in those games. I think they're going to be able to get pressure on him. This is a Baltimore offense, against a Denver Broncos very impressive defense last week that struggled. I think you're going to see more of that struggles, a messy division game here, and I like Pittsburgh at 2 or less to get it done. So I do have -2, -110. Again, that's the line. That's the current trends of both of these teams and where they're going and how I think they're going to finish the year. So Pittsburgh -2, book it.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. And obviously, we were talking about this. I believe we have this in the Circa Millions competition. I want to give a shout out to the great Fusini and Old Man Who Bets, of course. Old Man Who Bets, I believe, is having a martini at 11:15 a.m. in New York. If you guys are in New York, go to the Upper East Side, hang out. As I mentioned, we're going out in Allentown today. So if you guys are around here, hang the fuck out. And what's going on here? Tyler Huntley, go back to last year. This guy is purely ineffective against the spread. And obviously, straight up, he has no wins in his career within the professional football campaign, obviously. But go back to last year when Lamar Jackson did get hurt, maybe not coincidentally, at Pittsburgh in a loss, 20-19 on the road as a significant favorite in week 13. Huntley came in and probably went 0-5 straight up, and I believe 1-4 ATS. He's just not covering football games. And you go to the other side of this, Pittsburgh is a bye team. Pittsburgh is 3-1 straight up last 4. They're coming for the playoff race. This is the biggest game of their season, in my opinion. I had suggested I thought they might lose last week to Atlanta. Just a snapshot to NFL football. Atlanta did take the lead in the 4th quarter on a touchdown, and it got pulled off the board because of a holding call. And we know how subjective holding calls in NFL football can be. There's pretty much a holding on every single play. If the refs want to move an outcome, I'm not going to suggest they did. They can do it. Atlanta could have gotten there. I don't think the Steelers played great last week by any means to win on the road with a lackluster offensive performance, 19-16. Now they come home. Again, I'll say it again, probably the biggest game of their season. Home Baltimore, week 14. We're on this in the competition. I wish I had the hat. I know people are in Western Pennsylvania are doing the dirty towels and the whole fucking thing, and it's a beautiful thing. Guns picks. I'm not going to leave you hanging on here. I know you have some comments.
You mean the terrible towels? I just want to make sure we correct that for the people. But here we go. I saw Jabaka in the chat. The only thing he said, total of 36. Should I put it in a teaser? I don't put totals in teasers. Teasers are made for sides, not for totals. Looking at this game, I watched Huntley play firsthand last week in front of my eyeballs in Raven Stadium, and I didn't see anything. If I had a comparison for what Huntley is, he's a Walmart version of Lamar Jackson. You're not going to get all the value and all the quality of plays, MVP type status. You're just going to get a guy that kind of looks like him in the uniform. But if I had to lean in this one, the Steelers are just better with TJ Watt. That's completely it. It's like when he's in the game or he's playing and he's active, that team is on a different level. And then you see in the growth of Kenny Pickett as we go along during the season. These two teams, when they meet each other, they split every season. So it's always like, look for the first game. I always look at the first game and I always pass on it, see who wins that game, and then I go and hit them on the revenge spot. But, if I had to lean on this one, I'd probably say, yeah, you got to take the home team in the Steelers. The line movement is telling you that that's the play. And the Ravens just have been playing terrible offensively in the past 2 or 3 weeks. So, yeah, I'm not going to be taking the Ravens anytime soon. So lean Steelers.
Yeah, and I'm not on it officially, but those in the chat and the YouTube chat is popping. Pat Kappa, what's going on, brother? Told myself I'm done betting bad teams. I would say this, and I think this is a key point. What's a bad team in NFL football? What is it? there's so much parity in this sport right now. It's very top heavy with maybe one or two teams, and the next 20 teams are very closely graded. So just keep that in mind. Bad teams might not be so bad. And I think
there's a great movie with a great speech that I highly recommend everybody watch, and it's called Any Given Sunday. And Al Pacino gives a performance, but any given Sunday.
100%. 17 games, 18 weeks, and the parity is very, very real. And with emphasis against the spread, it's more important. You don't need to win the game. You need to cover spreads. And good teams in this sport do not cover spreads over a field goal consistently. So just keep that in mind. And again, it's a conversation in the Sharky Waters Nation. 9 words of lifestyle rather. We've got water. 32 minutes into the broadcast. We're going NFC East, and we're going to New Jersey, not New York, New Jersey. They've been there for years. MetLife Stadium. Giants coming in here off a cover as a dog in overtime. An absurd backdoor versus the under 2020 finish on a 41.5 last week against the Commanders. Getting the Bird Gang coming in here. Bird Gang, first divisional road game of the year. Tough stuff, hard to read. Guns picks, couple comments, and then I'll jump off it.
Yeah, the line right now is sitting at like what, -7, -7.5 for Philly. That should be telling you something. I mean, a divisional game, the road team is favored by a possession or more versus the Giants. But if you actually look at what the Giants are doing right now, they're not playing good football. They're coming off a 20-20 lackluster game versus the Washington Commanders, -95 net yards for the game. So, Washington absolutely dominated them from the yardage battle. But Philly has proved to be more of a home team than a road team, which is kind of make me lay off the team. They only beat Detroit by 3. They only beat Arizona by 3. They only beat Houston by 12, and Houston is as bad can be. And then only Indianapolis by 1. So kind of makes me a little bit hesitant to go and take the Eagles, especially on the road. It is a division opponent, however. There's just like I can find an argument for both sides of the ball here. I think the Giants are going to be probably the public dog of the week here, but we'll see. It's nothing I'm going to be playing personally. I'm just going to pass on this one.
Yeah. When I start to go through this, I do lean towards Philadelphia here. And I do think what you're looking at here is situational trends. I misspoke when I introed this game going back 2 minutes. They do actually have a road game in the division. It was week 3 at Washington, 24-8 cover. And you do look at the outside of the division trends versus the 1-0 inside of the division trend. This team has not performed particularly well outside of the division. Non-cover week 1 at Detroit, non-cover week 5 at Arizona, non-cover at Houston, who's obviously very, very low this year on Thursday Night Football in week 9, and another non-cover at Indianapolis in week 11. So this team has been abysmal on the road outside of the division, but much cleaner inside of the division. Giants now 1-1 off a cover. Did not cover against Dallas. This is the biggest number Philly has laid here in a long time. It's strong. It's Philly-oriented. I'm in the Philly area. I'm feeling the vibes. Bang, bang, Bird Gang on the road. Anthony, what's going on here?
Nothing official for me. I think one thing I want to point out that people, you see these teams, you see the division, you see the records, and you're like, oh, the Giants have to win this game to stay in the playoff hunt. Funny enough, it actually doesn't mean shit for the New York Football Giants if they lose this game. And I'm not saying Brian Dable is creating that type of culture because he's been anything but that in the Giants locker room, and getting that team motivated and getting that team to a different spot than they've been the last few years. But again, the only game that matters for the New York Football Giants is if they beat Washington. That tie set up a weird situation for both of these teams where really the biggest matchup, because they have some other tiebreakers and things like that, is the head-to-head. So Giants win next week, or 2 weeks, whenever that game is. They don't need it as much today. I've heard some rumors of them resting Barkley, which could throw the total maybe a little bit lower. I think the Eagles are actually a great teaser look. We talk about teasers sometimes to get them a little bit down below the 7, below the 3. You're kind of right around that half pick 'em, maybe 1.5 spot, depending on how you tease it. That's how I would look at this game, that or in game, because I do think it could be messy. But again, Giants might not be as much motivation as y'all think on the surface.
Yeah, throwing it right back to you. You got the hat on. Last 1 o'clock Slate game. really, really a grease fire type of game here. Dallas hosting the Texans. Texans now 1-10-1, 1-5 on the road. Cowboys showing significant strength in this campaign. And I think obviously Anthony, as a fan and also a professional sports handicapper within the NFL, most specifically, have some comments here. I think the line is telling us a story. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's line strength, right? It would probably tell you at the number to take Dallas. I know a lot of sharps that wouldn't do that, and it's hard to swallow laying a full 17. Usually you see 11, 12, 13, even 14, and you're hovering around 2 touchdowns, and it's hard to lay in the NFL. So there's some bad stats when you look at numbers that big, ATS, which is why I personally would probably lean Houston. I think the best look in this game, if you were going to bet it, because at that world there's not even teaser value necessarily, because you're still probably above a 10, you're getting below 2 touchdowns, but that's a slippery slope. I think the best look is the over. You get a Dallas team that might not be completely motivated throughout the game. Maybe the defense plays a little bit lackluster. Davis Mills is back in the starting lineup, which I think is a better Houston offensive attack. Nothing to write home about, obviously, but I don't think we saw the best from Kyle Allen the last few weeks. I really don't know why he was playing. So Davis Mills going back there. Dallas should be able to get what they want offensively. I think it's a matter of what kind of defensive effort and what type of length of this game that we get. Over 44.5 is probably the best look, and I would lean slightly to Houston and the points.
Yeah, no, this is a tough game. I think the total might have access. My only worry here is just going through Houston road games, all right around that total. If we really go back through the last sequence of games, at Chicago, 23-20, right at 43. At the Giants, 24-16, right at 40. At Miami, 30-15, right at 45. So I think you're right on that, but I think it's definitely a snapshot to sometimes the angle can be right, but the line is also sharp. So I think you're going to be sweaty on that. I think this game in general at 17-44, a big margin, but a small spread. Really tough stuff here. Guns, any comments on this one?
My comment is looking at the total on this game. I think right now it is sitting at 44.5. And the spread is minus 17.5 right now. So, I mean, for me, I always, when I see a high double-digit spread on a team, it just tells me that the team that they're going against is going to have struggled to score at least one touchdown. So you're basically betting on the fact that, do you think the Cowboys are going to score 40+ on the Texans? And I really don't think that they're going to want to do that. They're just going to do enough to win the game. So if there's any lean that I have on this one, is probably the under. And I always like doing that with double-digit favorites, especially when you see a total below, I don't know, 47, 48. That's kind of like always been my go-to. And you can see the line opened up at 47.5, steamed down to 44.5 too. So that's kind of the direction I'm going with that, is the under. And also, 108 people you guys are watching, you better hit the like button, because we're bringing the hottest content on the planet, and you need to hit the like button. You need to subscribe to the channel. You need to hit the little bell so you know when every time we're going to be live, and you can join us on YouTube commenting as well. Love you guys. Hit the like button. Let's go to the next game.
4 o'clock, Guns picks, an official Carolina Panthers on the road, catching Seattle in a tough sandwich spot. Road win at divisional rival Los Angeles Rams. Next week on Thursday night, short week, huge look ahead to San Francisco on Amazon Prime. I know Richard Sherman's out there having a ball thinking about this particular game, but the Gun catching the team in a sandwich, Carolina on the road, +4, an official.
Yeah, deli counter is open, as they say on Bet On It. The Carolina's fresh off a bye too. They're well rested for this game. After a nice home win versus the Denver Broncos that couldn't score 18 points if they tried, +103 net yard average for that game. Seattle is also off a close win against the LA Rams, 27-27, winning the net yards battle in that game, +119. Seattle wants to pass the ball. That they average 244 yards per game, 8.1 yards per attempt. But Carolina's defense is suspiciously pretty good against the pass. 174 yards per game passing in their last 4 games that they've given up. So you see, like, a defense from at least the passing defense standpoint, the Carolina Panthers are improving in that regard. Also, last 4 games, you got to look at these as small window samples for these two teams. Seattle +1 plus 1 point differential, minus 16 net yard average, while Carolina is only minus 2 point differential, minus 49 net yard average. So this Carolina team is competitive. They're frisky, and they're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games. So this is a team you want to buy right now. With Seattle, on the other hand, while Seattle was a little bit of a public darling, covering a bunch of spreads back and forth, not so much lately. They haven't covered their last 3. They're 0-3 against the spread in their last 3. So take that into account. Also, like Shark said, sandwich spot. They got to go play San Francisco next week at home. So maybe not looking at this Carolina team too hard. I think Sam Darnold's going to be the starting quarterback here, and that's just fine with me because he's been covering with them as well. So give me Carolina. I got him at +4, but anything above the +3, I like it too. 1.5 unit special for me. Carolina +4.
Anthony Latino, an official.
+3.5 for me. Some of those 4s got eaten up, but I do think, like he said, it's still good at 3.5. 3.5 is my magic number there with the Jags and the Panthers. So we need both of those to go with a little dogs and darlings. Maybe there's a sprinkle on the money line here, more so than that Jacksonville game. But I think, without beating it up, we don't want to spend a ton of time. We want to get you guys through this. There's a ton of games. 1:00 action is incoming. My Apple Watch told me to stand up, so we're going to stand up for the Carolina Panthers here. Kenneth Walker is out for the Seattle Seahawks. And I do think from a rushing versus passing standpoint, that leads right into what they're going to have to do more from that Seattle offense. That leads right into those statistics that Guns mentioned. Give me 1 second, boys, and we'll finish this up.
Dad duties on the dad bods.
Never stops on the weekend. But, so I like that offensive defensive matchup. The other thing that I want to speak to on the other side of the ball is the Seattle Seahawks defense against the Carolina Panthers offense and Sam Darnold coming off a bye, having the chance to get right, get acclimated again, now that there is a little bit more stability versus the wild beginning of the season coaching carousel that they had, quarterback carousel that they had. The Seattle defense cannot get, a pass rush going, right? They come in, this is an ESPN stat, but 24th ranked in the pass rush win rate. They're only winning at 36%. They can't get pressure. That's going to allow Darnold to sit back there. The game I think this personally is most comparable to, because it is a Seattle home game, is the loss that Seattle had 27-23 against Atlanta when Atlanta came in there. It was a little bit back and forth. Again, Atlanta got the outright win. I think they closed as a 1-point dog. Seattle was a 1-point favorite. So you're getting a few extra points here when I think that line probably should be closer to the way that Atlanta line closed. And I think Carolina can definitely get it done above the hook there. So +3.5, +4, +3 if it dips, I think is the lowest you should look at it for this one. But let's get the Panthers to keep that upward movement going.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. And obviously, we had discussed this before the Panthers started their upward movement. Obviously, Sam Darnold has a lot to prove. And the interim head coach, I'm not entirely sure. I think Steve Wilkes, he used to be an interim or head coach for the Cardinals going back for a period of time. Not a long period of time at that. But I think when you really see this, when you have an interim coach and you have an interim quarterback, and of course, people didn't necessarily think that. Obviously, Sam Darnold coming out of USC, top rated prospect, 2 overall pick, Anthony Sam. This is not where he was thinking his career was going, but I think as a slightly outside of the box corollary, what you saw Baker Mayfield do on Thursday Night Football is kind of where Sam Darnold is. He's a guy that was highly, highly touted that now has something to prove every single time he steps under center. I think Sam Darnold has a lot to prove here. And one more emphasis point to what I was making before. This is not only a sandwich spot between divisional opponents. This is really a sandwich spot between what is pretty much the beginning of the season and the end of the season in a standalone, just nonsensical spot. If you go back to last week again, at Rams, now we get Carolina here in a short week looking ahead to San Francisco. The Seattle Seahawks close with home San Francisco, road Kansas City, home Jets, and home Los Angeles. Those are all playoff teams. A random non-playoff team in their home stadium. It's not where they're going to function very well. I'm not on this officially as of now, but I think all angles are pointing towards this. Next game, 4:00 slate. If Anthony's back here, I think he is back. We're going to the other one. We're just talking about this division. We'll talk about San Francisco. San Francisco hosting Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay this year, one of, if not the most disappointing teams in the entire sport, in my opinion. I think people had a lot higher expectations for Tom Brady and the boys. I think to a certain degree it's Todd Bowles, not really an inspirational coach, definitely a defensive coordinator, not a leader of men, but the offense inexplicably has been awful. And on that point, you're looking at this game with defensive emphasis of first half under.
Yeah, and I saw 18s, I saw 17 and a half. The best number I saw was DraftKings 19. Obviously, you're kind of in no man's land with some of those numbers, so I'd probably play it all the way down to the 17 and a half, but get the best number that you can. So first half under 19 for me. I don't hate the under 37 and a half. I just know Tampa's upward movement late in some of these games could lead to a backdoor or something strange happening, as these games get lengthened and you get some garbage time points. So here I'm just going to lay the first half and focus on that. I don't really have a side. As scary as it is, I kind of like that plus 3.5 number again, but it's really tough to back Tampa. But on that first half point, right, San Francisco comes in with a great defense. The Tampa Bay mindset has been better defensively. They've gotten a little bit healthier defensively. Bowles has that mindset. And if you don't think San Francisco and a very good offensive-minded coach is not going to try to protect his starting quarterback, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant here, you're naive. If you look at the other side of the ball, again, against a very good San Francisco defense, the Tampa Bay offense in the first half is averaging 8.1 points per game. The San Francisco 49ers are averaging 13 points per game, right? And that Tampa Bay stat is against some defenses that are not as highly ranked here as San Francisco. So I think you're going to get a slow game script to start. Tampa hasn't been able to get out of their way. Mike mentions Bucks are not good. That definitely could be the case. It seems like that a little bit offensively week to week here. So I think you're going to get enough of a slow start, enough of the same thing that we've seen from the Bucks offense, a little bit more protection from the San Francisco offense, a little bit more conservative running short pass for the San Francisco offense. And I think it stays under in the first half.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't look at totals, and the splits obviously can become fairly complicated and condensed in a small window. But, when you look at Tampa Bay on the road here, I mean, this team is just useless. I mean, go back to their last few games here. 18 points at Pittsburgh, 3 points at Carolina, another complete dud at Cleveland. They're just really handicapped for whatever reason in the offensive category here. And, Tom Brady having – a season he wants to forget. And unfortunately, I think to a certain degree, sometimes, you play that long, you're going to fall off a cliff a little bit. And I don't think it's necessarily entirely Tom Brady, obviously losing their center in training camp, the schematic guy, the regulation of the offense, and also the protection in the middle, and a lot of different moving parts in the running game and also the receiving game. But I think you're onto something here. I think there's going to be a lack of points in this game. Guns Picks, any comments on this one?
This is a tough game to cap for me. I mean, you're doing quarterback in his first start, and you're dealing with a Bucks team that looked hapless versus the Saints on Monday night. They got short rest. I want to say lean under, but I just feel like the line has kind of already left me. I mean, I think it's sitting at 37.5 right now, and I just don't want to be any part of that at all. And also, I think Nick Bosa is not going to play in this game either for the San Francisco 49ers. And that's a big loss for them on the defensive side of the ball. Not that you're going to need it against the Bucks, who can't really, get it their own way as far as scoring goes. This is a game I have zero interest in. I kind of want to see what Brock Purdy does, though, on the field. Maybe there's some value in him later down the road.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree. And, we've seen this all year with Tampa Bay. They're very close on the number. The back door is obviously gigantically open oftentimes. You saw it last week, and it is a short week for them. And I do think if we're really analyzing the game ATS, I do think when San Francisco is starting, as Anthony said, Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, and they're still laying over a field goal, that does speak to San Francisco being just an absolute 53-man unit. And I think the lean here for people in office pools that want a side, I would lean towards San Francisco here. I think that Tampa Bay is a little bit old news at this point. I think it's, Super Bowl a couple years ago. Forget about it, to say the least. And,
again, another team that just needs to win in the division, right? Some of these splits in division, out of division, are really weird with some of these races right now. That whole AFC South, NFC South thing is a complete mess.
Without question. And speaking of divisional opponents, Kansas City Chiefs on the road at Mr. Unlimited, suddenly limited by happenstance, maybe not being on the Seahawks anymore, but Chiefs on the road 9-3 against the 3-9 Broncos. Just a season gone awry in every single category that you want to talk about. Offense, entertainment, motivation, brand, whatever. It's been a disaster. But Guns picks. I think the Broncos might show up here today. Talk to me on this one, and then we'll jump off it.
I mean, that's a pretty big line to cover for the Chiefs here. -8.5 versus a divisional opponent. I know the Chiefs play really well on the road. They're coming off a loss to a team that's kind of owned them year after year in the Cincinnati Bengals. They may want to take it out on Denver here. I watched Denver play last week. Their defense is really, really good. It's kind of sad that they have basically a Super Bowl caliber style of defense over there in Denver, and they can't even put 3 points on the board. You spend all your money, you invest in a quarterback that I'm telling you, there was guys wide open and he was throwing at their ankles. I mean, he just has no control. He has no accuracy anymore. I don't know if he ever was a good quarterback at this point because he just looks like the third backup of every other team. I can't trust Russell Wilson on any type of spread. If there's any lean that I may want to take on this, it's more predicated on what Kansas City does on the road. They love to score points on the road. They love to just put up the numbers. The line sitting here at 44. I lean over on this game. And I think that, maybe with the pressure that Kansas City can put on the offensive side of the ball, that you'll have the Broncos kind of wake up against, not a great defense for the Kansas City Chiefs and kind of move the ball a little bit. So, yeah, the lean would probably be on the over on that game.
Yeah. I see Anthony nodding over here. We get some comments?
I got nothing. I just want to see Russell Wilson maybe get it together, but it's tough. I mean, I think what you're probably going to get is a slower start out of Kansas City. I'm looking for live value in this one, so that's my angle, at least betting it today.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not on this officially, but I do think there's significant angles towards Denver in this matchup. And again, you go through this season for Denver. Of course, they cannot score, and that is just schematic. It's Nathaniel Hackett. It's Russell Wilson, obviously being in an uncomfortable environment for him. And I think, again, it's more so scheme. I think they just mismanaged the game across all points offensively within the scheme. But when you really start to go through their home calendar, OT loss to Vegas, real tight loss to Indianapolis, outright win against San Francisco, win against Houston, obviously not representative, but they're right there. And I think the key point here is they're inside of 9 points, regardless of the environment. And the Chiefs are in a weird spot here. And I do think that it's slightly overstated to say that the Chiefs have to bounce back just because they lost last week. In my opinion, when the Chiefs came into this season, they probably knew this was going to be the worst environment for their entire season. They got 3 straight road games, week 13, 14, and 15. At Cincinnati, huge revenge game off the AFC title loss last week. Then at Denver, at altitude, divisional game, not really where they're going to turn up. And then another one next week against Houston. This is a dead zone spot of all dead zone spots. I got to be honest with you guys. I wouldn't be surprised if Denver won this game today. And that's the natural contrarian in me. But I think please do not take Kansas City today. I think Denver is a very solid look. Guns, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I'm just the over. That's all I like on that one. I'm going to stay away from that. I watched Denver play, and they just can they score points? That's the thing. Can they score points? I need to see it.
I forgot you had already talked about this. I need to take another sip on a suddenly not so casual 7-point Sunday, December 11, 2022. Shotgun Waters Nation, 9 words lifestyle, round over water. Let's go. And final game of the card, Guns picks. Unofficial, 8:20 p.m. Dolphins at Chargers. Dolphins road back-to-back on the West Coast. I believe they stayed out there. I'd be hard-pressed to believe they came back to the East Coast after that game last week. Chargers at home, interesting position, tough line, maybe not. What's going on here?
Yeah, I'm going to be on the Chargers on this one. Let me tell you why. I mean, Miami on the road is just a different animal than they are at home. They're off a road loss themselves last week, minus 43 net yard average for the game. Then you got the Chargers. They're off a divisional loss to a rival in the Raiders, 27-20, minus 18 net yards for that game. Now you got the Chargers. They've played some tough competition in the last 4 weeks. They had to play San Francisco. They had to play Kansas City, Arizona, and then they had to play the high red hot Raiders, except for last Thursday. In that run, they are minus 4 point differential, minus 86 net yard average. Not too shabby against the competition that they played. The net yards probably a little bit worse. But you look at Miami on the road this season, minus 7 point differential, plus 18 net yard average. In their road games, they beat Baltimore by 4, lost to Cincinnati by 12, lost to the Jets by 23, beat Detroit by 4, beat Chicago by 3, and lost to the 49ers by 16. So if they do win, it's usually close. And if they lose, it's usually by double digits. That's kind of where everything is going for them on the road this season. I'm getting it at plus 3.5. That's the line that I got it at. I haven't looked this morning to see what the line is now, but I think the Chargers are just going to be pesky today versus this Miami team that just, is off a road loss versus San Francisco, I believe. Now they have to go travel not too far, probably stayed in California. You're right. To go play this Chargers team. So I'm going to be taking Chargers plus 3.5, and that's a 1.5 unit special.
Alignment from the odds fellow.
Just a slight lean to the over. I think both of these teams can get going a little track meaty. There's some injury stuff, that I'm going to look at a little closer to game time. Just who's coming back for the Chargers? Are they getting some of those key wideouts to maybe get Justin Herbert going a little bit more? But the Dolphins' offense has been good all year. They're going to put up points. I think it's a matter of Herbert sticking with them. I do lean Chargers and over 51. I think it's a low 50s total. Nope. No, it's high. 54.5. I don't care. Go over.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, obviously Miami is not playing defensive football, particularly on the road. But, I do think what we were just talking about with Kansas City having very difficult scheduling. This is difficult scheduling for Miami. This is not necessarily a bounce back on the West Coast. Hammered at San Francisco without Jimmy Garoppolo. Key point here. It was a defensive showcase by the Niners. Now they play another one-off on the West Coast. Crucial point, they have another road game next week on Saturday night, a short week at division rival Buffalo. So there's a look-ahead spot, and there's also just a sandwich third road game environment, this weird scheduling. And you look at the Chargers here, I think this is interesting stuff. The Chargers really have not played a lot of home games. They've played 4 out of their last 5 games on the road. So the only game we have in the last month and a half at home was a cover at home against Kansas City, who they do play tight almost every single game in the Justin Herbert era. Out of division is a little sketchy. They are 0-2 ATS. They got absolutely blown out in week 3 by Jacksonville, 38-10. But if people remember, that was actually a short week. Excuse me, it was not a short week. It was a mini bye coming back. But Justin Herbert had the rib injury, and he was taped up. He was matted up, whatever. And he was clearly not playing his top level of football with 10 points in that game in a blowout loss. And week 7, another blowout loss against Seattle. But I think this could reverse. As Guns mentioned, last week we had Las Vegas correctly to revenge them and cover the spread in division. Zigzag effect. This is where you want to buy a home team, catching Miami in a brutal spot. The sharpest angle on this game came and went. If you can get a 3.5, get it now. I think it's juiced at 3 across most books. And I think as a snapshot to market pricing, when books are putting a 3 on Miami, knowing how sexy that team is, they want you to take Miami. If books want you to take a side, run and hide. And speaking of not running and hiding, we are 60 minutes in the books on a beautiful December 11th, 2022, Sharp Sunday, Circa Millions, the show, week 14, the Shark, the Gun, and the Odds Fellow. Closing it out, my officials, New York Jets plus 10, Detroit minus 2, Jacksonville plus 3.5. Honorable mention, Denver plus 9. And I do think the Chargers at 8:20 p.m. have access at plus 3.5. Guns picks, Detroit minus 2.5. New York Jets, Buffalo in the snowstorm under 43.5. Carolina plus 4, fading the worst schedule spot, motivationally speaking, for Seattle all year. Chargers late night, 3.5. Cleveland plus 5.5. Anthony Latino, aka the odds fellow, Pittsburgh -2, Jacksonville alignment +3.5, Carolina alignment 3.5, 4, and Tampa Bay, San Francisco first half under 49. Guns picks. It is a beautiful Sunday. Close them out with some words, motivation, respect, abundance, and let's fucking go.
Appreciate all of you in the chat sharing all your information with us. I did get it wrong about Bosa. I guess he's playing today. I saw something this morning that he wasn't. He was questionable. I was wrong on that. I'll admit it. Thanks for letting us know, chat. Also, 123 people you watching us live. You better hit the like button. You better subscribe to the Dad Bods YouTube channel and hit the bell so you know when we are going to be live every time we come on the air. So till next time on the Circa Million Show Week 15 edition, we'll see you. Goodbye. Let's cash some tickets. And as always, let's keep dancing.